Hi, I'm Gigi, an ex-Amazon bar raiser here at Day One Careers. This video is one of a series that we're putting together so you can hear from current Amazonians about their journey to Amazon and their interview experience. Obviously, this channel is packed with our advice and best practices, but as I've explained many times, the Amazon interview process isn't completely homogeneous. People have varied experiences and approaches. So, we've been talking to current Amazonians to get their stories. Now, just one thing I will say is that some of the strategies deployed by the people that I interviewed wouldn't necessarily be strategies that we'd advise, but it worked for them. So I'm sharing them with you and you can draw your own conclusions. I hope you enjoy meeting them as much as I did. So, hey, Victoria, how are you doing?
Hi, Gigi. Doing great. Thank you. Super excited to be here with you today.
And I'm really, really pleased to have you join. Thank you so much for giving us your time on a Sunday morning in, I was going to say sunny Munich, but is it sunny there?
It is indeed. Yes, it's beautiful.
Nice. A bit grey and cloudy here. We've had a lot of sun here in the UK. We had like a heat wave. Did you hear about that? It was like 40 degrees here in London. I almost died.
Wow. Yeah. Everywhere across Europe, I've heard. So pretty crazy summer.
Global warming and all that. Okay, we won't get into those depressing subjects or I think I might cry. Let's just do what we were here to do, which is to find all about your journey to Amazon and what you found out about Amazon once you got on the inside, advice that you have for all of these lovely people who are visiting my channel to prepare themselves for interview. So let's get started with, please tell us what it is that you do at Amazon.
Sure, thank you. Today I am playing a role of a full cycle technical recruiter supporting professional services organization within Amazon Web Services in EMEA region. And in this role, I am working with hiring managers from different business lines. Right now, I am collaborating with hiring managers from 11 countries, and I help them to hire and develop the best cloud consultants with different focuses. In this role, I've been now for a little bit more than 2 months. And prior to that, I was a part of North America, a professional services team. And in this role there, I was helping our team to search for the best talents for data analytics and emerging technologies teams.
Ah, cool. So actually, I wanted to ask you this because sometimes it confuses me as well. So you mentioned the previous role that you had was a sourcing role, and this role that you have is a full life cycle role. So just out of curiosity, what's the difference between the two? Because I know lots of our candidates meet lots of different people with kind of recruiter in their name, from recruitment coordinators to recruiters to sourcers, etc. So can you kind of talk me through the difference?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes, that's exactly the point. We do have different functionalities within talent acquisition team. So there are people who call themselves sourcing recruiters. So what they do, they are reaching out to the candidates. They're doing basically the sourcing aspect of the process. They would be also working with the candidates up until their final conversation. So they're reaching out to you. They are talking to you regarding the opportunity, figuring out if this is the right fit. They're helping you also to go into your first conversations with the team. And then once you are in the final stage, this is when the client lead would be taking over. Client lead, this is the person, a recruiter, who will be working with candidates, starting from their final conversation, the on-site, how we call it internally, and up until the final stage. Full cycle technical recruiters, this is more common in specifically European region, and those recruiters, they are taking care of the entire process.
So you, in your current job, would do everything from the sourcing through to offer negotiation?
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So you go you do the whole journey with one particular individual from beginning to end?
Exactly. And to be very honest with you, I really love that. I enjoy it. Sourcing recruiter role was also very exciting, but I felt I was missing the part when I was really able to help the candidates to go to this final stage and really see how they progress in this process. So I'm really very excited and happy to be in my full cycle recruiter role. No.
Sounds awesome. I guess it's quite an emotional journey. You kind of like buddy up with someone who's got all these big kind of ambitions and excitement for the process. It must be quite an emotional roller coaster for you as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it is also very rewarding and motivating to see how they progress. Yeah.
I feel the same way. I mean, I guess I'm on the other side. If you imagine like the relationship, there's the recruiter on one side, then the candidate, and then myself as a coach on the other side, and we're all kind of going through this journey together from our own different perspectives. Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your career history before you joined Amazon? Kind of where did you start? Where have you been?
Sure, absolutely. So I started my career as a technical recruiter right after my graduation in Germany. And my first job were focused on recruiting experienced talents for SAP consulting firms. So the biggest challenge back then, but that I was facing was basically really the language in Germany. So the majority of my studying was in Ukrainian, because I was graduating from Ukrainian Free University here in Germany. So that's why the majority of the studying was in this language. And when I got into professional world, I needed to speak very good German. So that was my biggest challenge. Then one day, my husband got an opportunity to move to Silicon Valley, California, to work for his dream company. And it was amazing. So we did it. We were excited to move to California. But then there was just one but, again, the language. So I couldn't speak English back then, and I needed to start everything from scratch again. So I started learning the language. I went to a school, intensive classes. From 9 to 5, I was visiting the school. At night, I was learning and doing my homework. And then after 3 months being in US, I got a chance to work for a small company, which was outstaffing talents to Fortune 500 companies like Google, or back then they called Nest, Cisco, and some other companies. So all this time was great and I loved what I did, but there was something that I was missing, and basically really see how the talents I recruit are progressing in their career, and also the business aspect from it. So that's why at this point in time, I got a chance to move into corporate recruitment and join a small SAP consulting firm, basically corporate recruitment now. And I got a chance finally to cover all those aspects that I was missing. Living in Silicon Valley, it was always, of course, my dream. And that another dream that I had was also to work for a FANG company. I was interviewing for many of FANG companies, but I was also already in final stages. But I myself, even though a recruiter, I wasn't really good in interviewing and never made it to an offer, unfortunately. But this time, I guess with Amazon, I was doing everything right. So I was extremely excited when I got an offer. By the way, within less than 24 hours after my final interview with the team.
Wow, that's a quick turnaround, considering that these days sometimes we have candidates waiting a couple of weeks to get their outcome, and it can still be positive. I still get a lot of candidates who don't hear for 2 or 3 weeks and they think they've given up all hope, and I say, no, don't give up until you're told no, and then they get an offer. So 24 hours, that's great. You didn't have to wait very long.
Yes, I didn't. But just to your point, oftentimes many roles or some roles can be closed. And then, of course, recruiters, they try to find another role that is similar. So that's why sometimes it can take some time until...
Okay. Going back to the beginning, Viktorya, why recruiting? By the way, I don't think I've ever asked anybody else on these interviews yet why they chose the field that they chose. But now I want to ask you. Why did you choose recruiting? What was it about that appealed to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was grown up in a very young Ukraine, post-Soviet Union Ukraine, and it was a very hard time back then. People were losing jobs, people were not able to find jobs, and my mom, she was a single mom with 3 daughters, and she had challenges. She lost her job, and then she wasn't able to find any jobs. So, of course, being a single mom with 3 daughters, that was really very hard. Mm-hmm. And that was exactly the time when a lot of Ukrainian women went to other countries. It was either Italy or Greece or any other countries for jobs. So I was 11 when she left us because she needed to go for a job. And I was then with my grandparents, with my sisters. And I guess that was the time when I really felt like it can be right that people need to leave their countries just to be able to earn money to finance their families. So I guess that's my why every single day, just to really give people a chance to follow their dreams, but also to finance their families.
Yeah. Oh, Viktorya, I didn't know that story. I'm getting a bit teary now. Bless your mum. That's hard. I mean, I've got 2 kids, and leaving your children must be near impossible. It must be terrible. So kudos to your mum and to yourself for trying to, I guess, pay it forward and support people to not be in that type of position. I'm really touched by that. Okay, so moving on before I start tearing up. You said that FANG was something that you were really focused on. And of course, so many candidates that we talk to not only are applying for Amazon, but also applying for FANG companies in general. When it came to Amazon, what was it about Amazon that kind of appealed to you? I know there's this kind of aura around FANG and everybody kind of like, oh, I've got to work at FANG. But at the same time, before you actually enter into a job, everyone hopefully does their research to try and understand what it is about the company culture that they might find particularly appealing. So if we just hone in on Amazon, when you were applying for these roles and thinking about what it might be like to work at Facebook or Meta, I suppose it is now, Amazon, Google, blah, blah. What was it about Amazon that you thought was going to be attractive to you or suit you?
Yeah, well, a great question. It's very interesting. Actually, at the point when I was reached out by an Amazon recruiter, I wasn't really thinking about applying at any company. So I had in the past my interviews with Google, Apple, Facebook, etc. And I was actually pretty happy in my current role. I just got promoted to another role. I was building a team, etc. So it was really very exciting, great mission. But then the recruiter got me attracted. They introduced me to leadership principles, and they caught really my eye. The more I learned about them and how Amazonians really live them on a daily basis, and what they are able to achieve with those leadership principles, the more I understood that I am actually already aligning with those leadership principles, and I live them in my daily life. And that got totally excited me about this opportunity. So I am someone who loves moving fast, who doesn't believe in hierarchy. And I really focus always on the result and progress. And I felt like Amazon does have this culture where I can grow, where I can really make an impact. And I really fall in love with this opportunity. Also, prior to Amazon Web Services, I was working always in small organizations. Mm-hmm. And at that point in time, I realized that I am ready for something bigger, larger scale. And I was really excited to help organizations like Amazon Web Services to grow. So, and I guess the last aspect, last but not least, of course, I was intrigued by Amazon recruitment process. It is legendary, of course. And again, I was saying I was interviewing with several FANG companies, but with this process, I was extremely excited. And of course, I was happy to know that this time now I will get a chance to work with people who built such a comprehensive, bar-raising hiring process. So yes. Was happy to contribute to it now.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I say this to people all the time. the interview process was what sold me on Amazon. I wasn't particularly interested in working for Amazon. I'm a marketer. They weren't particularly known at the time for great marketing, but I just loved the process. It's so rigorous, so thorough. I thought, if these people are this thorough with their interview process, you can only assume that the processes on the inside are equally high bar. So yeah, I'm totally with you. I really love the process. So now that actually you've led us quite nicely into the process itself, obviously everyone that's looking at this channel is preparing for their interview. There's a lot of people out there who are really overwhelmed. There's tons of information out there. So with your background as a recruiter, with what you learned from your recruiter about the Amazon kind of ways of working and the process, how did you go about your preparation?
Yeah, great question. So first and most important, what I would say, really a lot of preparation. Again, I mentioned I am a recruiter, but interviewing was never my forte, especially interviewing for me personally. I was always able to help others well, but I myself just not really very well in selling myself. That's why I always need to prepare myself a lot. So for the first round tech phone interview, I was trying to focus, of course, on the job description, basic preferred qualifications, and preparing different stories that I would share with the interviewers to showcase the evidence that I've demonstrated the qualities or qualifications that are asked in the job description. I also studied a lot, of course, leadership principles and everything about Amazon culture. Watched a lot of videos, and here specifically, I want to mention that particularly your material was extremely helpful to me. I remember that time, it was exactly maybe a little bit more than 1 year ago. I watched interview Adam Posner with you, Amy Miller, and others.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that one.
Exactly, and that was exactly the time when I learned about you, about Amy Miller, and I started watching all those videos, and it was extremely helpful. So that's why by the way, I also wrote a very short article on LinkedIn about your interview with Amazon Web Services based on my personal experiences, and you and Amy Miller are mentioned also as my number one resources. So thank you so much for that.
Amy's brilliant as well. I'm always directing people. Amy, by the way, in case anyone doesn't know, she's also a recruiter at Amazon. She works for Project Kuiper, which are the people who are launching satellites for broadband. But yeah, she's fabulous. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go on.
Yeah, no worries. Basically, for the final interview, I was again preparing a lot, of course, all my stories based on previous experiences that I wanted to share with the interviewer here. Extremely important, star format, very structured, concise communication, and really practice a lot. I guess my family was already like hating me because I was always sharing with them all my stories. And besides that, I myself have oftentimes also issues with imposter syndrome. So what I did, for example, meditation was helping me a lot. I really was every single day meditating and really trying to focus, not to be very stressed out. And one day before the final interview, I decided to take a break, relax, and really not do anything, like really no preparation at all. And I guess this time it worked well.
Amazing. So I think one of the questions I get quite a lot from different candidates is around the data piece. People trying to wrap their head around, I'm being told that I need to present lots of data, but I don't really understand what data means. I don't sell to customers. I don't make money revenue-wise. From a recruiter's point of view, and I get this question a lot from recruitment candidates, what type of data points do you think useful to be able to introduce into your examples if you're a recruiter or applying for a recruitment role? This is off book, by the way. I didn't prep you for this question, but it suddenly occurred to me that I do get this question quite a lot. So sorry to throw you in the deep end there.
No, that's an amazing question. So, and there are actually a lot of data that we are working with as recruiters. Of course, we are also tracking our success, and there are many data that we are tracking. So first of all, of course, how many hires we have done. Like, for example, for the last year when I was preparing for my interview, I was telling how many hires I have done within some period of time. Then, for example, also time to hire specifically, how many jobs we are managing simultaneously at the same time, right? So that's also extremely important. We can also showcase, for example, if we are effectively implementing some new processes, how efficient it was, and maybe it was, let's say, for example, it cut 50% of our time. So we were able to improve our processes and be more effective. So there are so many different kind of datas, and recruiters are working really with metrics. We have a lot of them, and I think as recruiters, we are very often similar working as a salesperson. So as recruiters, we need to have a lot of data, and it's extremely important to present them in the answers.
Yeah, I've never made that. I don't think I've ever really made that connection. I know recruiters do often kind of mention on LinkedIn that a part of their role is sales, but until you mentioned it there, I hadn't really thought about how close the analogy is, because you've got a pipeline in the same way that salespeople have a sales pipeline, know who's going to buy my product, and they have to kind of take them through the whole process. I guess it's very similar for recruiters. Your kind of candidates are potentially your sales, and you've got to get them all the way from warm all the way through to a closed sale, I suppose.
Absolutely, absolutely. And a lot of us, we are coming from agency backgrounds, and agency, of course, is very salesy. So there's a lot of data, conversion rates, like how many candidates we needed to interview to move to the next step, etc. How long it took us to hire the person, etc. So there's so many data that we can work with, and that's really extremely important to showcase in the interviews with Amazon.
So actually, I was going to move us on. It's a brilliant segue into the next question I wanted to ask you, which was about the key leadership principles for kind of the role that you're in. But you caught my attention with the point that you made earlier about you have a lot of potential roles open that you're recruiting for at any one point in time. Now, one of the conversations I have quite regularly with candidates is around kind of the communication between themselves and their recruiter. And I think a lot of them probably don't appreciate how many roles you're recruiting for at any given time and how many people you're trying to communicate with. So just for a sense of scale, if you don't mind me asking, can you give me a sense of maybe how many recs you have open on average at any point in time?
Sure, absolutely. So again, it would be also depending if you're working with a sourcing recruiter, with a client lead, or with a full cycle recruiter. I myself, as a full cycle recruiter, currently am working on 28 open job recs, and I am right now collaborating with 12 different hiring managers. So you can imagine all the meetings, all the also candidates that we are talking to, etc. So there are many people that we are talking to. Of course, we do our best to support every single candidate as much as possible. But of course, as you mentioned, some understanding is always very appreciated. And probably one aspect that I would like to mention is that I also forgot to mention when I was talking about how I prepared for my interview is, but it's really extremely important, stay very close to recruiters and sourcers that you're working with and ask them for help, because they know the best what exactly the teams are looking for. And of course, they would be more than happy to help you. They are interested in you being successful. They are your advocates. But of course, if you, let's say, don't hear from your recruiters, you've sent an email, you don't hear from them, just send a follow-up message. Because again, I just shared with you the numbers, so you know what I'm talking about.
Massive. And I honestly don't think people appreciate how many roles that you have open and that you're working on in any point in time. So if you're watching this now, anybody, and you're struggling to get communications back and forward with your recruiter, please bear in mind that it's going to be you and possibly 27, 28 other people sending those emails. So bear with them. They will always try their best. Actually, before I move on to the kind of talking to you about key LPs, I'd just like to take you back in terms of preparing your stories, because there are different strategies that people take to approaching how they prepare their stories. Some people start with, let me look at all of the leadership principles, understand them, and then find stories for them. Other people say, let me look at my job history and my resume. Understand, sorry, I just tweaked my neck. Understand, everybody, sorry, I was driving for about 6 hours 2 days ago and I've managed to get a strain in my neck, so apologies for that. Other people look back at their resume and look at their stories and say, which leadership principles do I think fit the best, those stories? Or some people do both. When you think about how you approached creating your stories, how did you do it?
Yes, that's a great question. And of course, all 16 leadership principles wouldn't be not covered during the interview process. So what I would recommend first is, of course, reach out to your recruiter and source and ask them if there are potentially some specific leadership principles that are extremely important for the business line or job family that they are interviewing for.
You do that, by the way. So
yes.
Understand your experience. Did you spoke to a recruiter and said, can you tell me which of the key leadership principles are? Which, by the way, I always tell people they should do.
By the way, good point. I didn't, but I didn't back then.
Right.
But I would recommend to do that. Today, I would certainly do that.
Right. Understood. It's all a learning process. Thankfully, I'm telling people every single day they should do that. So don't worry. I have that bit covered. Okay. So let's think about your experience, right? So how did you go about it? Did you look at your resume first and try and find leadership principles that matched your stories? Or did you kind of go to the leadership principles first? Which kind of was your methodic approach to developing your stories?
Yeah. So what I was doing, I was more looking into really very strong examples and projects that I worked on, and tried to really write down about everything about those projects, what I was able to achieve. And here really specifically, I was focusing on high level complexity, something or some specific stories where I was able to make a business impact. Yes. And then based on those stories, I was thinking about, okay, what leadership principles they could align with and what are specific data points that I could showcase. There were some specific leadership principles that, of course, I was extremely focusing on. I knew that customer obsession is universal leadership principle that is extremely important for everyone at Amazon, as well as learn and be curious. And of course, in trust. So I've heard that this is one of the leadership principles that cannot be, it's not coachable, and everyone is really focusing on this one. So I really tried to think about some specific stories where I was able to build some relationships and what were those situations, etc. So I myself tried to build all my stories and then try to align them with the leadership principles. But to be very honest with you, in my preparation, when I was preparing for interviews, I wasn't really focusing on leadership principles specifically. I just really tried to understand them and then write strong stories. And then in the interview, I was really trying to focus on answering the questions, not aligning with any leadership principles, but just really trying to answer the question.
Yeah, I think that's such a brilliant point, Viktorya. And again, a conversation I have with candidates all the time when they're saying to me, how do I know what leadership principle they're asking me? And my advice is just answer the question. If you answer the question, I always tell candidates to write down the question so they make sure they don't forget it. But if you answer the question, you won't go far wrong. And then if you are slightly going off track, your interviewer is there to pull you back and get the data that they want out of you. Cool. So I'm going back, I'm still in our interview actually, in your interview. Was there anything that surprised you in your interview, because you're obviously really well prepared, and I don't know how many hours of preparation you put in, but I'm going to assume based on what I've learned about you in the past 30 minutes, you put in a lot of preparation. So anything that you didn't expect that kind of threw you off slightly, or kind of like, oh, okay, I didn't expect this?
Yeah, great question. So I guess there was one question that was really very interesting. And by the way, I love it now, but I wasn't expecting that. It was for each specific behavioral question that the interviewer was asking, I was always asked a question, how would you do it differently today? Basically the retrospective aspect. That was something that I wasn't really even preparing for this question. And I really needed to do this retrospective on the interview and share my thoughts on this. I love that. I actually really am doing every single time now in my daily business, of course, now I'm always doing retrospective and thinking about what I've learned to do it differently the next time. And it is also part of Amazon's culture. So we take risks, we fail, right? We are self-critical, we fail, we made mistakes, but then we take ownership of it and we learn from it and do differently next time. We do better next time. Yeah. So I guess that was really something that I didn't expect. And I think I thought that it will be very extensive conversation, and I felt a little bit, of course, overwhelmed. Okay, overwhelmed. It's probably strong.
It's intimidating. That's fantastic. And no one should be embarrassed by the fact that they feel intimidated by the process.
Yeah, when I've heard that I will be speaking to so many people on one day, and each conversation 60 minutes, I was overwhelmed. To be very honest, I was.
But sure then everybody is.
Yes. But then on the day of the interview, I was really enjoying it. I felt elevated. I really had such an amazing feeling, and speaking to every single interviewer got me excited even more. So I really loved it. And that's why I'm telling every single candidate right now, how about my experiences, right? Because it's probably the best to tell own stories. And I really, the majority of the times, hear from the candidates that they're enjoying it.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've been doing a few of these. I think you're number 4, and as much as there's uniformity in the process, there's huge diversity in the process as well. And I think, having been a bar raiser, because I got the opportunity to bar raise across so many different job families, different countries, you get to see that diversity that you probably don't get to see if you're just like a hiring manager, hiring for your own roles and maybe interviewing for kind of tangential groups around you. And when I speak to people about their personal journeys, they're very, very different. One person I spoke to, they didn't do any preparation at all, didn't really learn about the leadership principles, but still got a job, So it's amazing how different everybody's experience is, which is why I guess I wanted to do this series, because I obviously try and give advice on how I believe best practice based on my experience. But at the same time, everybody has to be prepared for the fact that it might not go the way I tell them it might go, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I also remember having a person on my team who was telling me that they didn't prepare at all. They went on site to Seattle, had the interviews, and got the job. And it's amazing. I know I wouldn't be able to do that.
I wouldn't be able to sleep at night at all. But I guess, it takes all sorts, doesn't it? People like you and me who are just like, got to be in control, got to have a plan, got to approach it. And other people who, quite frankly, like my husband, who studies for like 30 minutes the day before the exam and somehow manages to get like A's. It's disgraceful. Okay.
It's amazing.
It's offensive, quite frankly. I'm one of these people that just slogs my way through life, and he's just anyway. We won't talk about my relationship with my husband. That's not what this channel is about anyway. Leadership principles, right? You talked about knowing that some leadership principles were going to be really important. You mentioned customer obsession. You mentioned learn and be curious. We kind of delved a little bit into dive deep, although we didn't name check it specifically. So let's have a think about recruitment, because obviously we get lots of people applying for recruiting roles on our channel. When you think about your role as a full cycle recruiter, what do you think are like the most important leadership principles? I know they're all important. We can pay lip service to that, but nonetheless, there are some that are more important than others. What would you say they were if someone was applying for a recruiting role? What would you say to focus on?
Yeah, I would start with the first one, which is the most important in my opinion. It is customer obsession in general. We are customer obsessed, and we always need to work backwards from our customers' needs, right? In this case, who are our customers? Of course, first our hiring managers and the business. So we need to understand how we can help them. But on the other hand, they're also candidates, and they're also our customers. So we need always to understand their motivation too. That's why we always need to be obsessed about both sides and try to marry both of them. So that's probably the first and most important. The second one, I would say, is earn trust, that I have already mentioned, because we, as recruiters, we are all about people and relationships, right? We need to build relationships with every single person on the process, with candidates, hiring managers, bar raisers, coordinators, etc. So to be able to build those relationships is extremely important for us.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm interested in talking about earn trust, particularly because you're a tech recruiter. But there's a lot of there's narrative on LinkedIn, as you well know, about how tech recruiters who are not themselves coders or solutions architects or whatever else it is, are qualified in the broader sense of the term to be able to find people with that skill set. And I guess earn trust must be really important for you to be able to give your hiring managers confidence that you understand their roles, even though you couldn't necessarily do those jobs yourselves, that you understand what they're looking for. Am I right?
Absolutely. And as a recruiter, we don't need to be able to code. It's not our job, right? So we as recruiters, we can be a technical recruiter today, but maybe tomorrow we are recruiting for sales positions. It really doesn't matter. When we are, for example, first, of course, reviewing the resumes, we are always focusing specifically on basic and preferred qualifications. So there are specific tools and mechanisms in place that are helpful for us in order to be able to qualify and move to the next step. And just to mention to this aspect specifically about qualifying, this is not really a recruiter's job to qualify if the person is the right fit to do the job. That is something that interviews are for. So first of all, of course, the technical phone interview. This is the time when a candidate is speaking to the person, someone who is doing already this job. And they certainly can code, and they certainly can do everything that needs to be done in this job, and they can qualify. And of course, then there are also final conversations or potentially sometimes assessments or any other tasks that are given to the candidates.
And so really someone's got to make sure that their resume reflects what the job description is looking for, because of course that makes your job so much easier. If the job description looks like this and the resume looks like it's a really good match, then that makes everybody's life easier, I assume.
Extremely important. So I would like also to give one recommendation. I see oftentimes candidates just applying with their LinkedIn profiles when this LinkedIn profile is not really fully filled out with information. There's not enough information, nothing, just titles. So in this case, I would say it wouldn't really work out for us, because this application needs to be intentional, and we as recruiters, we need to see what exactly a candidate has done in this job, what they have been achieving, etc. Because we are always looking for the basic and preferred qualifications on the resumes. So extremely important, be intentional and customize and tailor the resume for the specific job, specifically focusing on basic qualifications, which are non-negotiable. And then if any preferred qualifications are there, that's amazing. Please highlight them on the resume.
Cool. And actually, you also mentioned I think you said what they deliver, what they achieved in their job. So I think that circles us back to that whole point about metrics and making sure that in their resume or CV, depending on what continent you're on, that you include those types of data points in your resume/CV.
Absolutely, absolutely important. Of course, if this is a technical position, then very important is to mention all the tech stack that the person has been working with, but also specifically what they have been doing, like architected, designed, delivered. So really focusing specifically on what they have been responsible for and what they have achieved. And of course, when it's more into marketing and sales, many numbers can be also mentioned in the job description, as well as for recruiters. So it's really extremely important.
Cool. So sorry, I'm so sorry I took you off track. So we meant to customer obsession and then earn trust. What
Yes.
else?
The next one, I would say learn and be curious, because we at Amazon are learning every single day. So I've been with Amazon Web Services now for almost 1 year soon, and it feels like probably 3-4 years from what I was able to achieve and learn. So we have a self-serving culture at Amazon. So I'm sure you've been speaking a lot about that, but it's really very important to be able to figure it out on your own, to be a successful Amazonian. That's why learn and be curious is extremely important. Oftentimes we have candidates who potentially have not all the qualifications that are asked, but then they have evidences for qualities, learn and be curious. So then our hiring teams would be open to, of course, hire them and help them to get up to speed as soon as possible. That's why these leadership principles are also important. And the next one I would say specifically for talent acquisition professionals is hire and develop the best. Of course, it is in our DNA, and we are raising the bar with every single hire. That's why it's so extremely important for us. I'm always saying to my candidates, when you are interviewing for a role, you are not competing with other candidates. You are competing with the bar that has been set by our current team. So that's why I'm always trying to help them to understand if, for example, they have someone on the team already, some friends or someone from network, speak to them, understand them, what the team is doing and what is the level of this team, etc. And I guess the last one, the fifth one that I would like to mention is strive to be the Earth's best employer. This is one of the newest leadership principles that have been added last year, if I'm not wrong.
July.
July,
I remember, because I had to do a whole bunch of new content. I was like, oh God, but yeah, July.
Oh, right. So, yeah, extremely important for all HR and talent acquisition professionals. Of course, we are advocating for our employees. Of course, we are advocating for our candidates. We innovate on their behalf, and we always are advocating and making sure to continue to improve our working environment to be one of the best employer worldwide.
Awesome. Thank you. That's really nice, comprehensive list. So if you are applying for a recruiter role, make sure you pay attention to those leadership principles in particular. So we've been on a journey. We've come from, your childhood in Ukraine. We've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? This is a long one. So your mum and your childhood in Ukraine, all the way up to joining Amazon and your current role. Right, Viktorya, sorry, we had to edit a bit out because we got all crackly. But Viktorya, we've been on a long journey with you from your childhood in Ukraine all through to your current role. Would love to know, when you were finally inside Amazon, having done all of your preparation, is there anything that surprised you, anything you weren't expecting, or anything that was maybe different to that which you had imagined?
Yeah, great question. There are several aspects, I think. The first that I would like to start with is leadership principles. So, of course, I read them. Everything was amazing on paper. But my question was, do employees really live those leadership principles, those qualities on a daily basis? And I was extremely impressed how the employees, Amazonians, are really taking into consideration on all those leadership principles on daily basis whenever they are making their decisions. So that was extremely impressive to me. I guess that's also the reason why we are able to move so fast and build amazing solutions for our customers. Another aspect that I was also impressed by is how much resources they were offered for everyone, Amazon-wide or Amazon Web Services-wide. That was really very impressive. You as Amazonian, you can learn about anything, and there's research about anything. There are white papers and wikis for everything. It's really it's amazing. Sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming because there's so much information, but on the other hand, you can find information about anything. So again, self-serving culture, right? So it's huge.
Yeah.
And I guess the last aspect that was really also very exciting for me, something that I didn't expect, was how flat are the structures and how close leadership stays to employees, to understand what are the challenges people are facing and how to work on improvements. And I would like here to share one story that I had myself. So it was in February, end of February. I got a chat message on Chime from Ian Wilson. He is our VP of HR. And he chatted me and asked if I have time to chat. So just to give a better understanding, Ian is reporting to Beth Galaty, and Beth, she is reporting to Andy Jesse. Mm-hmm. So Beth is senior VP. Now, he reached out to me. That was right the time when war in Ukraine has started. And he reached out to me to ask how I'm feeling, how is my family doing, if we need any help, if I need to take some time, I should be taking it. And it was extremely, extremely impressive to me. I was touched. That showed me that leadership, our leadership team is really caring. Mm-hmm. They're really providing the help that that we need. And I didn't expect that in such a huge organization like Amazon or Amazon Web Services, that leadership principle on the leadership team on those levels, they're reaching out to people, ask how they feel. So that was really very touching for me, and I am extremely grateful.
Oh, that's a really nice story. That's a really lovely story. Okay, so I think we've covered everything that we wanted to cover. So the final thing I'm going to ask of you, Viktorya, is if you could give just one piece of advice. I know that's hard to make you narrow it down to one, but one piece of advice for the people watching this video who have got their interviews coming up. It might be first round, it might be loop, on site, whatever we're calling it these days, panel. What would that one bit of advice be?
Yeah, if I may, I would give 3 advices.
Give me the top one. I'm going to force you. Give me the top one, and then you can give me the other 2.
Okay, so I guess my first and most important is look for mentors, networks, and community people who could help you to prepare for your interviews. Like, for example, Gigi, amazing resource, amazing material that Gigi is providing, but also reaching out to her. She has been a bar raiser, hiring manager herself. So really reach out to the people if you don't know where to start. That would be my first one. May I start with the second and third one?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I guess the second one would be intentional with your choices and actions. I see oftentimes candidates applying for any positions, just trying because, of course, they want to join Amazon as organization. Please don't do that. Be intentional. Ask yourself, what would you like to do? Because on the background, we do see in the system everything that you as a candidate are doing, or what positions you're applying for, etc. And it might look unprofessional, maybe even inconsistent in what exactly you want to pursue. So please make sure to do that. And don't be afraid to fail. Try again. And this one is really huge. I see so often candidates in second or third time when they're going through the final interviews being successful and joining our organization. And some of my friends, tenured Amazonians, they've done several interviews. They were failing, but then they were successful, and now they've been with the organization for many years. So please don't be afraid to fail and try again.
Amazing. Thank you. Such good advice that we at Day One Careers absolutely would support. Fabulous. Okay, so I'm going to let you get back to your family who are now allowed to get back on their devices and the rest of your Sunday. So I just want to say, Viktorya, thank you so much. You've been a complete delight and you've been really generous with the information that you've shared and some of your own personal stories. So thank you very much on behalf of all of our viewers.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me here. I hope that helps.
Absolutely. And I'm connected to you on LinkedIn, so I'll be keeping an eye on you as things progress. So, and if anyone is, I guess, looking for roles in their space, can they catch you on LinkedIn and follow you and keep a track of the roles that you're recruiting for?
Absolutely, absolutely. And right now I am again hiring for cloud infrastructure architects, DevOps consultants, and also cloud application architects. So please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. And if I ever can be of any help, just ping me.
Right. I will add your LinkedIn profile into the detailed description on YouTube, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I will let you go. Thank you very, very much for your time and have a fabulous rest of your day.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye.
Now what you need to do is click the link here to claim your free Day One Careers Customer Obsession Taster course. Watch that and you'll nail every customer obsession question asked of you in your Amazon interview. Or if you want to do that a little bit later, why don't you check out more here of our incredible insights and advice on Amazon interview preparation.